and the Early Years podcast. I'm Glenn Denny. Now, I first met this absolutely amazing person in September 24 at the Exploring the Power of Play conference run by the amazing Vanessa Dooley. It was a wild day, a wild experience. I don't think I'll ever forget the keynote speaker, Shanae. Oh my word, that was just amazing. But this person, I think she had one of the busiest workshops of the whole day because everybody wanted to know a lot about big feelings and emotions. And this is this person's bag. Welcome along to Circle Time, Sarah Emerson.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here. And it was what a day. It was a whirlwind, wasn't it? It was fab.
It was wet, but do you know what?
Yeah.
Did any of us care?
Nope.
Not really. We just had,
In a,
it was an absolute blast of a day. But yeah,
it
I
was,
mean, I remember because we were kind of almost like side by side with our
yeah.
workshops because it's all in a field, it's all outside. And I could see it was like, your workshop's really busy as well. And so was my, like, I
Yeah.
think we ran out of bales just to have people sat, because people were sitting on hay bales and that. And we ran out of bales for both our workshops.
We did. It was a busy one. And like you say, it's people are looking for help at the moment with those big feelings and
hmm
behaviors and particularly post-pandemic and in the world we seem to be in at the moment, there seems to be an awful lot of children struggling with that stuff. So yeah, it was definitely a lot of questions, a lot of people asking about it, and a lot of people looking for help.
Yeah, there absolutely is. I mean, there's that bit. I always tell this little story for me. It's yeah, I've been doing this. I mean, I'm 28 years now doing this, and big feelings and emotions. It's always been there. But you're right. It does seem to have got. It's almost like a snowball. I started at the top of the hill, and this snowball is rolling down, and these big feelings and emotions. It's got bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah.
But is it that we don't understand how to deal with it, or do you think there's more external things coming in which is creating this monster snowball of emotions?
It's really hard, isn't it? Because I think probably in 20 years we'll be able to look back at it with more perspective. And it is always hard to know when you're living through it because, we say children are living in stressful times, but then, I talked to my dad who's 87 and he grew up playing on bomb sites in the war. And
Mhm.
he's like, what? What are you talking about? Your daughter's stressed today. Like to him, my daughter, for example, has the dream life compared to his childhood. So I'm aware we need to be mindful of not always kind of assuming things are difficult or easy. But I have to say, I think we forget just how big a deal the pandemic was. I think we
Mm.
really do forget that. And those, I think it affected children and adults of all ages. But we're 5 years on now. So our 5-year-olds now were born at a time when, mums were giving birth on their own, when they
Mhm.
weren't allowed birthing partners with them. They didn't have, their mum, their auntie, their sister, whoever they might have chosen to have around as well. We didn't have the same interactions and we had real fear,
Yeah.
and babies pick up on stuff. We kind of think that babies aren't noticing what's going on, but babies pick up on stuff. They pick up on our feelings. And we actually lived through a time where we were kind of persuaded that, and I've no idea, I'm not a scientist, I don't know what was real and what wasn't, but we thought sometimes if we walked past someone, we were going to get COVID, it was terrifying. And babies were being born into that, and parents didn't have support. And you had parents who were homeschooling older kids, trying to work from home, new child in the world. And so the idea that that wouldn't cause stress, I think, is probably unrealistic. I think it definitely did cause stress. And then we left the pandemic and we've gone straight into a time of global uncertainty and we've got a cost of living crisis. So I do think children are under pressure because families are under pressure. And there's an undeniable impact to that. And then you throw in, we've got a generation of parents, and I include myself in that, albeit I'm an older parent, but we've got a generation of parents who are desperately trying to break cycles of the way we were raised with our emotions and
Mm.
understanding that. And that's difficult too, because we're all learning how to manage our feelings at the same time as trying to regulate our children's feelings. And so there's a lot going on.
There is. It's like, when you were talking there, I was like, uh-huh, uh-huh. And it's almost been like one stumbling block after another. And it's like as soon as we picked ourselves up, there's something else to trip over. And it is almost like that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. It really is. And the world is definitely, I think, getting busier and more fast paced. And I'm not sure always our environments are working as well as we wish they did for some of our children.
Hmm.
And it's looking at how, my background way back when was started out as a Montessori teacher. And one of the things I always hold on to from that is it's about what can we change to help the child? What can we do in ourselves? What can we create in our environments? What do we need to change to help the child? Not how do we get the child to fit our environment? And
Hmm.
I really always hold on to that. And I think the same is true with emotions. It's if we're seeing behaviors in a child, what does that tell us, regardless of the cause? What does that tell us about what we've got to try and create in terms of our environment and relationships for that child?
Yeah, I mean, when you were talking there as well, it reminded me. I mean, I've changed. I mean, even recently, we're talking the last few years. I've changed my practice, and I was kind of trained way back when it was like, well, no, we're going to stop crying now because that, and it's like now I look back on myself and I go, wow, I just didn't know what this is the way I was taught. But no, I mean, nowadays I kind of I've looked at kind of like the neuroscience aspect of it, and I always recommend to people, there's like an introduction to neuroscience, this level 2 course. And do you know what? It's amazing. It was a game changer for me because it helped me to understand what's going on when a child is demonstrating a big emotion about whatever it is, particularly toddlers, which is my favorite age group. And there
Mine
is a
too.
lot of that. And, they're well known for it and maybe wrongly labeled, but it's just what's going on in their heads right now, what their brain development is doing to them. But I nowadays, it's like you were saying, fitting the environment to fit the child. That it. I will sit back and I'll let them have that emotion because they need to have that emotion before they can move on, and then I'm ready there to support them when they are ready.
Absolutely. And I love what you just said then as well, because actually what we've got to remember is if we want children to grow into people who can manage their feelings, ask for help, build this thing we called called resilience, all of that stuff, they've got to experience their feelings if they're going to learn how to handle them. If we don't let them feel them, they're never going to get a chance to learn how to regulate. So it's like you've got to let them feel it. And sometimes that's big, and sometimes it's difficult, and sometimes it's angry, and sometimes
Hmm.
it's uncomfortable. But that level, if we can get ourselves to a point where we can get comfortable with their uncomfortable emotions, we can prove to them this stuff can be got through. It might be icky inside, it might not be nice to go through, but we can get through it. These emotions will pass. And I look at kind of, taking it to the bigger picture of adult mental health and child mental health and thinking, I know we can't save children of the future from difficult times. That's always going to happen.
Hmm.
But if we can say to them, when you have a difficult feeling, we can get through this somehow. I feel like that's such a powerful message. And what you just said then points to that. It's let them feel it, help them through it in whatever way is right for them. And
Hmm.
that's the other thing, isn't it? It's kind of we hear these strategies of whether it's, deep breathing, whatever it is, but it's like we're all different. Some people go for a run to get regulated. That's my idea of a complete nightmare. I'm not a runner. You are, right? I think you're a runner. So like you're more likely to go running. I'm more likely to be found on a yoga mat doing my deep breathing. Neither's right or wrong. It's just different. And the same is true for children. Some of them are going to do that deep breathing. Some of them need to jump it out. Some of them need to squeeze it out by, giving something a good squeeze. Some of them need to shout it out to start with. So it's finding the strategies that work for the children that we're working with, not our predetermined idea of what's right.
Yeah. I mean, there was something I saw recently, just out doing the shopping one day. I was in a large supermarket and I could hear a child having an absolute meltdown. But do you know what? The parents just let them do it. And I just wanted to go over and hug them and say, well done. You're letting the child experience what they need to feel. It could be that, they weren't allowed a particular chocolate bar or
Yeah.
biscuit or, that massive tub of ice cream or whatever it was, but they needed to experience what that feeling, whether it was disappointment or whether it was they'd bumped over and hurt themselves and it was just too much. But the parents let it happen. And, it was just, it was wonderful to see, because sometimes I think as parents, you just want to scoop them up and say, it's okay. Well, no, it's not okay in that moment. Right then, there's so much going on, and it's okay not to be okay.
Yes, and that's one of when I'm working with any parents or professionals, one of the things I always say, one of my little bugbears is don't tell a child they're okay when they're not, because actually you might know it is okay in the grand scheme of things, but for that 18-month-old or 2-year-old in that moment, it's actually the end of the world. Like they really
Yeah.
feel it, you know?
Mhm.
And for all sorts of reasons. And it can be something like they've been bought a chocolate bar or a sweet or whatever, probably whatever it might be for a young child when they'd been, parents had been happy with them or they'd done something good in a parent's mind, and then they ask for it the next time and they don't get it. And they're like, well, does that mean I'm not good? Does that mean I've done something wrong? Now, there's so many complex messages that we
Mhm.
give to children, and we don't always know what's at the bottom of it. They could have been in the supermarket, and, it may be a child who's actually going to end up diagnosed with some sort of, sensory differences in the future, and they were overwhelmed by the noise and the light, and we just don't know that yet because they're really
Yeah.
little. And there's so many complexities to it, but if we don't let them have it, they won't learn how to deal with it. And that support from an adult, a trusted adult, which I think, in early years settings, we have such a responsibility, don't we, to be that trusted adult
Yeah.
when the child's primary carer can't be there, to be that trusted adult to go, I've got you. I know this is tough, but I've got you, and we're going to get through this together. And
Mhm.
there's no limit. And this is something I think again we forget. There's no limit on human distress. You can't put a time limit on it. You can't say
Yeah.
you've got to be over this in 30 seconds. It just doesn't work like that. Some children are over it in 30 seconds. Some of them aren't over it 3 days later. You know, my
Yeah.
daughter will refer to things that happened 4 months ago that she still hasn't got over yet. So it's like there's no limit on human distress, no time limit. So it's allowing them that space to be themselves and to feel what they're feeling.
It absolutely is. I mean, when I've had toddlers when I was in the toddler room, having they were right in the middle of whatever it was they were playing with, and it was like, well, we're going to go for lunch now. Do you want to come for lunch? No. Okay. And it was a case of I stayed with that child whilst they got over what they needed to feel, and the other team member went through and took the rest of the children for lunch. And it was like, that was fine. We got what we were doing. And I think it's as well, it's that consistent, when we're talking about earlier settings, it's that consistent approach to managing big feelings as well, isn't it?
It is because part of what we want to provide for children is that sense of emotional safety. And one of the key components of that is predictability, right? So if
Hmm.
we're not predictable as adults, if we're in a team of 3 or 4 people and we're all reacting differently to children's emotions, that's going to be potentially alarming for that child
Hmm.
because they don't know what to expect when they have that big feeling. So if we can, as a team, find our way to reaching a kind of common consensus around making sure that it's clear to children that all their feelings are welcome here, that this is a place where you can have feelings and express them safely. If you're not expressing them safely, we'll let you know. We'll help you figure out how to do it safely because you can't chuck furniture, but if you need to be big and move and throw things, we'll help you do that safely. And also thinking about the messages we give them about feelings. I saw something recently, which was somebody said to a child with the very best of intentions, the child had chosen the happy card in the morning to show how they were feeling. And the person said, oh, that's good. We want happy children here.
Oh, yeah. Mm.
And I know what they meant. I know what they meant. They meant, I'm happy, you're happy. And I want to
Yeah.
do my job well to make you happy. That's what they meant. But even subtleties of messages like that, where does that leave the child who's feeling sad? Where does that feel the child who's feeling jealous, who's feeling angry? We come part and parcel of being human is our emotions, and it's making sure children know you can have them, we'll support you through them. But if you're not being safe, and that's where, of course, behavior kicks in, if you're not being safe, and then we need to figure out how to help you to express this in a safer way.
Mhm. Yeah. No, it's absolutely it. I mean, I've been somewhere where a child will throw something, and that's okay if we've got the space to do it. Throw away. If nobody's there, throw it. It's even reinforcing things like, we talked about the snowball at the start, but out when we're playing in the snow, it's like, well, snowballs are fine to throw, that's okay, but throw it from their bottom down. It's teaching little boundaries like that, just subtly, that go through our average routine. And things like that will then go, well, I need to throw something, but if I throw it that way, it's going to hurt. But if I throw it that, okay. And, it's little strategies that we can do in daily routines.
It is. And listening to you, then I can hear in your voice the way that you're talking to a child is in that very equal way. It's providing information, it's sharing, it's almost like you're sharing useful information that they
Hmm.
need to know. And that's so much more powerful than kind of when we get into nagging territory or,
Yeah.
sounding kind of, it's so easy to get with the best of intentions, again, to get a bit patronizing, to get a bit naggy. And when we treat them in that way that says, I see you want to do this. I'm going to help you figure out how to do it in a way that keeps everyone safe. Let me give you some tips. And then they're so much more open to listening to us
Hmm.
and to hearing us. And something else I was thinking while you were talking was the distinction between those sorts of behaviors and then behaviors that are triggered by feelings and how we mix them up sometimes. Because I'll often, again, something we often say is we talk about kindness a lot with children, don't we? And that's an important thing to talk about. But the number of times I say to parents and practitioners, this behavior right now, this is not about kindness. This is a kind child. I know they're kind because you can give me 1,000 examples of when they are kind. This behavior right now, that's about the anger that's inside this child right now, and they don't have capacity to be kind right now because they're angry. And it's not they don't want to be kind; it's that their emotions have taken over. They don't know how to self-regulate. Think about your neuroscience point. Their brain hasn't reached that point in development where they can control their actions and regulate their feelings independently. And so their emotions are coming out in behavior. But that's not about kindness. So talking to them about kindness isn't going to help. What we've got to do is say to them, I see you're feeling this. You can feel it all you like. Let's figure out how we're going to manage it. And I'll help you with that. And there's sometimes we kind of we get lost in what behaviors are. And it's such an important distinction, I think, different types of behavior.
I think as well, isn't it important to kind of name that emotion that they're feeling and talking about when they're obviously when they're ready to talk about it. If they are angry at that point and they're thrashing about and doing what they need to do, it's obviously important to talk about it afterwards. It's like that was very big. That took a lot out of you there, didn't it? And it's kind of acknowledging that it was tiring, but this is what angry feels like.
Absolutely. And there's a theory, and in the world of neuroscience, people obviously, like in every field and sector, people have different views, but there is a theory that when we name an emotion, it becomes easier to process. So
Hmm.
if a child can give a name to that feeling, I'm angry. This is, like you said, this is what anger feels like. And, I've had children say things to me like, well, Sarah, it starts in my tummy and it comes all the way up here and it goes down my arm into my fist until I just have to hit someone. You're like, okay, but that's amazing, to be able to
But it's
tell me
quite,
that because well, I can
it's
do something with that. That I can work with, right? I can
yeah.
say, okay, amazing. We can't hit people, right? But let's find something you can do with that feeling that helps just as much. So it's it's figuring out what it feels like and being less scared of it as a result. Because even as adults, we can fear anger and we can feel fear these big feelings. But if you can't put a name to it and you don't have the life experience yet to deal with it, and then throw in the fact that, our brain is still developing into our 20s, mid to late 20s before our
Mhm.
brain is complete. Um, and I also think, when I look at adults, I often say to people in a training session, I'll say, look, any of you manage your feelings perfectly 100% of the time. Do any of you do that? And everyone goes, no, I'm not, I mean, if I'm hungry for a start, I'm not much fun to be around. So, it depends. We all have our triggers, right? But we don't as adults. I'm nearly 45. I don't handle my feelings perfectly all the time. The chances that a 2-year-old or even a young 3-year-old
Mhm.
is going to be able to do that is literally laughable. I mean, there's no way because I can't do it at 44, nearly 45. How on earth can they do it without the same, brain development and life experience? So a little bit of cutting them some slack helps too, I think.
Oh, 100%. I think, I mean, I was listening to you and it's like, yeah, I'm nearly 50 and yeah, I mean, do not speak to any members of my family because I can snap like that, particularly when I'm tired. That's my trigger. When
There's
I'm
your trigger.
tired. When I'm tired, it's like, no, don't come near me. There was something. So, obviously, I follow some of the same groups on social media that you follow as well, because, yeah, obviously, I think we're interested in similar things there. But I noticed there was one thing recently as well that you kind of commented on a post and someone was on about a sticker chart. Sorry, I've just made you laugh.
Yeah, I'm not a
Are
sticker
they
fan.
useful, is what I'm asking.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Right. So sticker chart. The reason I'm not a fan of sticker charts, I'll try and do it a little bit succinctly, but
I feel like I've
sticker
opened a
chart,
can of worms right now.
we need a
I'll
whole
get my
podcast on
spoon.
this. Yeah. But it's a really important one. I'm so glad you asked about it because sticker charts link to rewards and punishments, right? And the problem with rewards and punishments are that they change the dynamic of the relationship between adult and child. And they also change the way the child feels about themselves. And they don't actually work. And the way I prove this to people is to say, right, anyone ever either been themselves or the person behind a car going through a speed camera? So if you've ever been behind someone who has no idea of the speed limit and no respect for the speed limit, they will be doing 45 in a 30, and then they see the speed camera, they slam on the brakes, they go through the speed camera at 30, they get through it and they go up the other side and they come back up to their 45.
Hmm.
That to me is absolute proof of the problem with rewards and punishments. You do whatever you have to avoid the punishment and you don't get caught. But that doesn't mean you change your behavior. And that same thing happens with children. So if we do things like sticker charts that say, if you have, you can have a sticker if you sleep through the night, eat all your food, don't hit someone today, use the toilet, whatever it might be. If we set the goal as that sticker, the first thing it does is actually distract the child away from the thing we want them to be focusing on. So they're now not thinking about kind behavior. They're not thinking about regulating their feelings. They're not even thinking about using the toilet. They're just thinking, how do I get the sticker?
Yeah.
So we've moved their focus right away from what matters. Then, if they get the sticker, all well and good. But there's inevitably going to be a time they don't get the sticker. Sticker has now become a punishment because you don't get it. When
Hmm.
you get a punishment, you now feel like you've failed. And I see this with toileting all the time in particular. Children build up this real worry about using the toilet. So they avoid the toilet. They don't want to use it because it's the thing connected to the stickers. So you've got problems with it not actually working. With behavior, often you'll find if you give a child a sticker chart for behavior, they'll carry on doing the behavior, they just make sure no one sees it. They'll just go around the corner. It's a child that goes around the corner, they go to the toilets, they go somewhere where there isn't an adult easily available to watch them. So it changes the behavior as long as an adult is there. But the adult
Hmm.
isn't there, the behavior doesn't change. And then finally, on this, the dynamic between adult and child changes because this becomes about a conditional relationship now. This becomes about, I approve of you when you do what I say to get this reward. And in so many ways, that's problematic. But it isn't, shouldn't ever be the primary motivator for a child's behavior is to keep an adult happy, ever.
Hmm.
That's safeguarding wise, that's problematic. Relationships wise, that's problematic for the future. And even just for helping them learn right from wrong is problematic because it shouldn't just be about what an adult thinks. It should be about nurturing their innate sense of right and wrong. So yeah, it's when I do complex work with parents or professionals on complex situations involving toileting or food or behavior, the first thing I say is please get rid of the sticker charts, get rid of the timeouts, get rid of anything involving rewards and punishments. Let's get to meeting this child's needs, focus on what they're telling us they need and showing us they need, and we go from there.
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Yeah, I'm not a fan of sticker charts. I get if that, it's one of those, it's like sometimes we have to support parents, but I think as practitioners, maybe we need to be a bit braver and say, actually, these things don't work.
Absolutely.
We see it time and time again. I've got a perfect example from a previous setting I was in where, because you mentioned about, don't hit somebody. Well, we had a child that was doing that. It was just part of his behavior, but it was, well, if you're kind today, we'll put it wasn't a sticker chart as such. It was you put another coin or whatever it was,
Marble in
token
a
in your
jar.
kindness jar.
Yep.
Same sort of principle, and I'm like just dying inside. Um, it didn't work. It didn't work because again, like you said, as soon as the adults weren't looking, bop, straight to another child, and the other child will then come and tell us. And I'm like, well, we've got to go and tell your pet. Round and round and round we go.
And it doesn't focus the child on changing their behavior other than to not get caught. And it doesn't teach them useful strategies. It relies on logic. And I do believe that most children, pretty much every child I've ever worked with, they don't want to be hitting people. They know you walk into any earlier setting and you say to a child, what are the rules here? They'll tell you kind hands, kind words. We don't run inside. Like they know the rules. Knowing the rules isn't the problem. The problem is having big feelings and then not knowing how to express them. And that's the problem. And the problem with behavior approaches, I find, is that we have things like sticker charts and people go, well, they work for 80% of the children. And you go, right, that 80% probably didn't need a sticker chart. They were probably going to do exactly what you asked them to do anyway, because
Mhm.
for whatever reason, they can in this moment. The 20% it's not working for, and you use the sticker charts for, those sticker charts aren't going to work either, because for whatever reason, that child has a different need and your current behavior approaches aren't meeting it. So we need to figure out a different plan for that child. But it's not actually that the sticker charts work. It's just that they kind of, we think they do because they work for some children, but those children didn't need them anyway.
Almost like they're marketed it that way as well, isn't it?
Yeah, and I think it's because we want quick change. I think as adults, we want quick change. We want something that's going to guarantee to change behavior quickly. And, the reality is, I do consultancy and training in behavior and big feelings, and I see the same pattern every year. In July, my inquiries go down because everyone goes, oh, new lot of children coming through in September. All the behaviors are going to have gone. Children have moved on and moved up, and we're not going to get, but it's all going to be fine next year. And then come January,
Up we go again.
inquiries start to come in. And by this time of year, they're flooding in. And it's because everyone's going, oh, oops, there's another load of children now who need our support. We're always going to have behavior. We're
Mhm.
always going to have big feelings. Our task is to embrace it and find ways to meet it.
I think as well, you said something there. It was like it's almost like parents and even practitioners as well. Like I'm not going to single out parents because that's not fair on parents. But it's that quick fix, and behavior isn't a
It's not a
quick
quick fix.
fix, is it?
It isn't. If you've got a 4-year-old who is pretty well able to self-regulate and have self-control, and they occasionally do something that they shouldn't do, that is pretty easy because you can just go, hey, come on, look, do you remember we do X, Y, and Z? And they go, oh, yeah, oops, sorry. And you move on.
Mhm.
That can be an easy fix. But the people, when people come to me for behavior, it's because they're stumped. They've used all the stuff they usually use and it's not working.
Mhm.
And in those situations, I wish it could be a 24-hour fix. But reality is it's not, it's often months of work. And sometimes we don't even get as far as we want to. But it's days, weeks, and months, day in, day out. And it's a culture, it's a whole setting culture and a whole family culture and that partnership with parents. And like you said, when I used to run a setting, and I don't run one anymore, when I used to run one, parents would come in and say, well, it's all right, we've got a sticker chart. And I'd say, okay, look, I'm going to be honest with you because I have too much respect for you as a parent not to be honest with you and not
Mm.
to share with you the knowledge I have. So I'm going to tell you why I'm not going to be a fan of your sticker chart. And it's up to you what you do with that information. But I feel I owe it to you to share with you what I know as a professional. And then you can make the decision from there. And then they'd go, oh, okay, yeah, that makes sense. And then we'd kind of move on. So I think that working together is
Mhm.
vital too.
It is. It's definitely that partnership working. Parents sometimes feel like they're managing behavior on their own, and actually, we're there as well. And the more knowledge as professionals we get, and the more experience we get as well, I think that that's the other thing we can't underestimate is the experience and the different kind of strategies that we might learn that may work for one child. It might also work for another child. You never know. But it's that partnership, it's that linking together and saying, actually, none of us are alone on this. Let's work together.
Let's figure this out together and make it part of what we do because this idea that behavior should just be eradicated and children should be able to just learn the stuff we think they should be learning. Behavior is learning, emotions
Mhm.
is about learning, especially for young children. We're not talking about 8, 9-year-olds here, we're talking about early years and their emotions, like you started by saying, they're so big at this age group, and it's we shouldn't be kind of wiping those to the side. We should be saying this is a vital part of your development. So me taking 10 minutes to sit and chat with you about your feelings, that's just as important, if not more so, than spending time teaching you phonics, right? That's,
Yeah,
actually, phonics, we've got loads of time for that. Emotions, we really need to be focusing on this when they're little.
literally what I was about to say is like, there's times when you might focus within the setting on the wrong thing, like say, for example, phonics. I mean, I don't do phonics in my setting at all because that's for school. If I do it one way, it might not be the way they do it in school. I'm just going to confuse them, and then we've got big emotions again. I'm setting them up to fail, and I can't do that. I can't do that to my children. Um, but yeah, it is like you say, emotions are learning that, you've got to go through co-regulation then self-regulation. You can't have one and then move on to the other. It's impossible. It is a huge learning experience for children on understanding how they feel and understanding and being given support to find the strategies that work for them.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you mentioned co-regulation because obviously that's one of the primary strategies that I would advocate for. And it's important to also think, again, coming back to us as adults, how many of us totally self-sufficiently manage our feelings? If we're not okay, some of us we might just want to sit down on the sofa and be on our own. Others will go onto social media and get support there. Others will text a friend, others will call a friend. We might talk to a partner or a sister or
Mhm.
whoever. We might stroke our dog. We might go out and connect to the world and be in nature. Regulating our feelings often involves some form of connection to people, to animals, to the world in some way. And so, even watching TV, if people do that when they're not feeling okay, it's a form of connection. You're connecting in
Mhm.
some way to something that's going on. And yet we think children should be able to just regulate their feelings by themselves. And it's like, again, it's laughable. Of course they can't. You can't expect a 3-year-old to just go, I'm feeling really angry and I'm just going to go over here and deal with it by myself without telling anyone about it and without needing help. That's not life. We've got to say to them, come find me. And if they're going to come find us, we have to be a safe person. So coming
Yeah.
back to what you were saying about being on the same page as a team, if our response when a child has a big feeling is frustration, disappointment, panic, fear,
Hmm.
any of those things that can come up, that's not a judgment, that's normal. We're all going to experience those things. But we've got to work on dealing on feeling those things because we've got to be there for that child so that their feelings are less scary. Because as a parent, I look at my daughter who's 3.5 and I think, when you're 15, I need to believe that you're going to be able to pick up whatever piece of tech we're using at the time and tell me you've got a problem. So I've got to be a safe person for you. And that's the message we want to, as early as practitioners, give children to adults. Will be there for you and help you. And we are safe and we are kind and we're compassionate and we will be responsive to your needs. We'll be honest with you when you get it wrong. We'll help you find a better strategy, but we will do it in a non-judgmental, compassionate way that makes you feel supported and filled with professional love.
Being that trusted person, isn't it?
Yeah, 100%. It's vital.
Well, Sarah, I hate to say it, but time has caught up with us. This has been an absolutely amazing conversation. I've loved it. It's, it's kind of everything that I've kind of worked on lately. It's just you talk about it there with such passion, and it is brilliant. And the fact that big emotions is a learning opportunity is a clear message, I think, for parents and professionals. It's let them learn, let them do it.
Let them do it. Absolutely. Let them feel them. And if they feel them, then they can learn how to manage them.
That's brilliant. Well, Sarah Emerson, thank you so much.
Pleasure. Absolute pleasure to talk to you as always.